My son has been cheating on his girlfriend and has gotten another girl pregnant. This is a throwaway account for obvious reasons. My son, 16, has had a girlfriend about for 2 years now. They were inseparable for months. She was always at our house every weekend and was genuinely an amazing person for my son. He was always a gentleman and a sweet person, so they both deserved each other. He always would buy her gifts and surprise her, since her family has had money issues in the past and it has made her become stressed, and eventually she had to get her own job because of this. She found extreme comfort in my son. She even had my number and always made sure to give me a call or text to tell me to have a good day or ask me where my son was if she hadn't heard from him. About 6 months ago, they seemed to become distant. She stopped coming over more and often I could hear them arguing whenever she did come over. Most of the time, she would sleep on the couch across the room from him and they would watch movies all night, but recently she started to leave earlier and always seemed upset. I tried to mind my business and give my son his privacy because I know how much privacy means to teenagers. However, one day, this was in September, I couldn't help but ask when she was literally crying and walking out of his room saying the exact words, "If you don't love me, please just say it." He said he was busy with school and that they were arguing too much and broke up. After that, she never came over anymore and my son started going out more and coming home later. He told me he was finding new friends and exploring new options. Fast forward to 12 p.m. today. I get a text from a girl saying that she found my number in my son's phone and asked if she can talk to me over the phone about my son. She eventually goes on about how they've been hooking up since June and she found out she was pregnant by him 2 months ago. She failed to give me a specific date. She said she was about 4 months pregnant so far and just turned 15 in late September. Eventually, she tells me how he's had a girlfriend for a while and that he promised to leave her so he could be with the girl and take care of their baby together. I was shocked by this news and thought it was a sick prank, but she then showed me messages exchanged by them where she sent him pregnancy tests and pictures of them together. She was bawling her eyes out on the phone and telling me that her parents would kick her out and she's scared of what his girlfriend will say or do to her. She told me that she wanted to keep the baby and wants to confront his girlfriend, but felt like it was more important to come to me first, since he said he wasn't going to tell me until he left his girlfriend. This whole time I thought he was single, but it turns out they have been together and that he's been going over to her house instead, so I would think they were done. The girl even told me he went as far as secretly blocking my number in his girlfriend's phone so she couldn't text me or call me anymore. I don't know where to begin with this. How do I confront my son? I never took him as this type of person. Like I previously stated, I just found this out around 12 p.m. and do not know how to go about this. My son is at his friend's house staying over and is coming back tomorrow morning. What do I even start with? I'm so confused and torn. Your kid cheated and got a girl pregnant. My parents still whoop my ass for way less. And he's a creep. He got a 14-year-old pregnant. That girl just got into high school and Op's son is swarming around her like a fly. Op needs to tell this girl that she is delusional for thinking there could be anything more to have with her son than the baby. I mean, how little self-worth does she have to stay with him while he's with someone else? This could be a situation where she wanted the baby so they could stay together, not saying that it is, but the details given from Op make it seem like that's how it went. She needs to give that child up. She is way too young and Op's son isn't going to do shit with that kid. She is clearly not thinking straight since she's in love. Sorry that I don't want a child being born into an unstable home with an underaged mother, and the fact that I don't want woman to think that being second place in the running for being with a loser is a good bet. My stepsister got knocked up at 14. And it fucked her whole life up. Never graduated high school, doesn't work, married a felon. Doesn't have enough money to even provide for herself, let alone a child. Sounds like you respected his privacy a bit too much. I know this is an unpopular opinion for Reddit, but Op sounds like the cool chill parent to the point of it harming their kid. The cheating and the relationships are not the big problem here. It's the pregnancy. This is not something 15-16-year-olds will be able to handle on their own. I would sit him down and tell him she talked to you, but allow him to tell his side of the story. He is still your son, and as shitty as this is, he is going to need someone on his side. The issue here is not the cheating or the 16-year-old girlfriend. Call the 15-year-old's parents immediately. You need to have a meeting with them, their daughter and son. Update. Disclaimer, to avoid confusion I am going to name the girl who is pregnant Diaresis Layla Diaresis. That is not her real name for obvious reasons, but I am going to address her as Layla so it is less confusing for people to read. Thanks. I apologize for writing this days later. I have had a lot on my plate for the last few days and it has been beyond stressful. Thank you to everybody who gave me genuine advice. I waited for my son to come home from a friend's house. At this point it was almost time for dinner and was New Year's Eve, so I had ordered Chinese food for us and brought out board games. I figured to start the conversation out slow and work my way towards the topic. I knew he wouldn't open up to me if I approached him with anger. We sat on the living room floor for a while watching TV and eating and laughing. I then brought up that if something was going on he needed to tell me. He insisted nothing was going on and became defensive. I asked him if he was sure and became even more upset. I stopped giving him the chance to tell me himself. I placed down my phone with the messages Layla had sent showing me the pregnancy test and pictures that my son and her had taken together. His face went completely blank and he had nothing to say at first. We sat there in silence for a good minute or so while he was in complete shock that I knew. He started freaking out and telling me that it wasn't what it looked like and he was beyond stressed from the situation. I remained calm as possible while he started to tell me little excuses. I gave him a chance to tell me how this even happened and what he was planning to do about it without telling me. He told me that him and Layla had met during spring break through his girlfriend. His girlfriend had brought Layla to one of their dates at the mall. She then added him on Instagram soon after and they had small talk until around May. She often would send him flirty texts and would insist on hanging out. He claimed him and his girlfriend have had a rocky relationship for a couple of weeks and that she was very sneaky and often talked to her ex and other guys that had liked her. He told me this had caused a major mistrust between them and they slowly started to fall apart. One day in June, all three of them had planned to go to his house for a while and then go hang at the park nearby. There is a huge park area a block away and a lot of teens hang there, my son included. His girlfriend ended up cancelling last minute and it was just him and Layla. They talked for a while and he claimed one thing had led to another and they hooked up once. I also usually work on weekdays and apparently this is when all the hooking up took place. She often lied to her parents about her whereabouts and they started to hook up frequently. He told me that she said she was on birth control and kept telling him that protection was not needed. We now know she was never on birth control. She then told him one day that she was experiencing horrible morning sickness and tenderness in her breasts, odd cravings for food, and terrible mood swings. My son told her that it was just a period and she was over-exaggerating, but she secretly had purchased pregnancy tests and took 3 altogether that came out positive. He didn't believe her, so she had bought more expensive pregnancy tests, Clear Blue brand, and took them at his house. They both came out positive. He was very freaked out by the situation and didn't know where to go from that point. He asked her what happened to her being on birth control and she gave him the excuse that it isn't always effective. He still feels like she purposely became pregnant to trap him and make them stay together. He said he has been wanting to tell me but hasn't since Layla refused to tell her parents. He said she wore very baggy clothes around her parents to hide her stomach and wouldn't bring anything up about the pregnancy. She often stayed in her room and became quiet at school. He knew she needed to get an ultrasound and needed to figure out the plans for the baby. He pushed for an abortion when she was earlier in her pregnancy, but she denied it every time and wanted nothing but to raise the baby. He lied to her and told her he would leave his girlfriend to help her raise the baby and so they can be together, but she still refused to tell her parents. He was very scared for her and knew she wasn't in the right mind to raise a child. He then went on to say her parents were highly strict but loving, understanding people. He said that they would not kick her out but would most likely not let her keep the baby and let them raise it together. Supposedly, she had lied to me and exaggerated the situation because she knew her parents would not let her keep the baby once they knew. The next morning, I called Layla again and asked her if her mom could stop by one day in the morning to talk about the pregnancy. I promised her nothing would happen to her and I would try my best to make sure the best decision comes out. She eventually gave in after my son convinced her, and soon enough I had her mother's number. I texted her during the evening and asked her if her and her husband could stop by because a situation had occurred between my son and her. She said she couldn't make the next day but would come on January 3rd. Around 11:30 a.m., Layla and her mother stopped by. Her father did not come for some reason. Of course her mother was completely devastated by the news and couldn't hold her feelings in. They started to argue back and forth for a while and eventually they both calmed down until Layla had started crying. She was heartbroken by this and kept calling her crazy for thinking she could perfectly raise a child as a freshman in high school. She even called her out on sleeping with a person that has a girlfriend that she was friends with. She was furious and I could understand, but I knew anger wouldn't help the situation any better. Finally, after what seemed like hours and hours of trying to come to an agreement, we both agreed on adoption. We are not 100% sure yet, but this is what we feel is best. She is way past the point of abortion and wouldn't get one to begin with. All of us talked her into giving the baby to a more financially stable family that could give the best care to it. It was hard getting her to agree, but obviously there was no way she could raise the baby like this. Her mindset was completely wrong and she was just scared and way too young to comprehend the reality of a child. I did explore the ideas of a DNA test, but we're still planning out that. She said he was her first ever and that he was 100% the father. My son had agreed on this, but at this point, who knows, right? She finally went for her first ultrasound today and she is pregnant with a girl. She is actually 21 weeks pregnant and is definitely showing. The doctor was very concerned since she has not been to the doctors through her pregnancy until today, but thankfully the baby seems fine. She is thinking about doing online school temporarily because of people bullying her once they find out. They have both agreed to not tell anybody about them being their parents for the sake of people judging them and causing stress to her. He did break things off with his girlfriend and admitted he had cheated on her with a person and that it's best for them to go separate ways. I bought Layla prenatal vitamins and maternity clothing. Her father found out and was beyond enraged but is trying to help his daughter through this. Her mother said she will keep my son and I updated and have another meeting to finalize the decision, but it definitely seems like she is going for adoption since nobody agrees that they should raise the baby together. My son and her are not allowed to see each other as well anymore or speak to each other unless it is about the child. I guess that's where we are at now. We have a while to go from here and a lot to decide on since adoption is a whole other process to go through, but I feel like I can finally breathe somewhat now. Thanks to everyone again for the advice. I think you have done an exceptional job so far under very difficult circumstances. All you can do is take each process, pregnancy, birth, adoption, one step at a time. Keep all lines of communication open between all parties, but make sure you are fully supporting the best interests of your son. Best of luck with it. In regards to DNA testing, there is a non-invasive DNA test that can be given at approximately 8 weeks gestation just through a blood test from the mother. I highly recommend getting it. I did explore the ideas of a DNA test, but we're still planning out that. She said he was her first ever and that he was 100% the father. Definitely get the DNA test. I would not take Layla at her word at all. She lied about being on birth control. I'm impressed. Not often do these go like this, all parties working together for the betterment of the kids involved. You'll get through this, mama. Also get yourself and son into therapy. If adoption is the choice, it will be emotionally taxing lifelong and you two will need to know how to cope with those emotions. People try to blame the parents, but I remember being in Layla's mindset at one point and I'm just glad I decided against it. Unstable teen girls do very scary things, and young boys who think they know too much, do too much. Good luck to you both.